This is Paul Levy here. The sun is setting here in Brighton in the UK. This is another short reflection in the field of digital innovation. And this evening I'm thinking about a rather long word, which I'm sure you've heard of before, which is anthropomorphism. And in the field of digital innovation, particularly inventors and designers will sometimes talk about anthropomorphizing in the digital world. When we anthropomorphize, we ascribe human characteristics, human features, human elements to. It can be an animal, it can be a process, it can be a thing, an object, and we can use that quite often in language. We could talk about our computers being naughty and not doing what it's told when something goes wrong with the computer, and we're getting frustrated. And of course, we can give names to our pets, to animals, and quite often project onto them behaviors that actually that animal isn't probably really displaying. And we talk about the animal, he's in a bad mood today. He understands exactly what I'm thinking. And people that own pets can sometimes rather shock us to the extent to which they are treating their animals as if they're little people, little human beings, able to think and behave like we do. Um, so it can be a fun thing to do, but also it can be a dangerous thing to do in the field of digital innovation. When we anthropomorphize, we create robots that look a bit like us. And YouTube is absolutely full of trade shows and places online that are about invention and innovation that will show the latest robot who walks around a bit like us, and the robot waiter in a cafe, that has a computerized version of our voice and that will come and serve us. We talk about with things like IBM Watson, which you may well have seen, which is an artificial intelligence entity that can take different forms. It can be on a screen, or it can also find itself into even the belly of a little robot in a hospital that can keep a child that's worried entertained and their parents informed. And when we talk about AI, artificial intelligence, being able to talk to us in ways that are similar to another person, we're anthropomorphizing. And a big part of digital innovation is imagining the digital world being a sometimes faster, sometimes more effective, sometimes more efficient version of a human being. And actually, that's dangerous because actually we are limited in what we can do as human beings. We're mortal. And a lot of people are probably anthropomorphizing because they want technology, they want digital innovation to enhance us as we are. And lots of science fiction books and films have shown, perhaps, or imagined the dangers of AI and robotics getting out of control and turning on the human being as the problem to be solved, as the thing to be wiped out. It's also an issue in design around familiarity, that if we're to have robots in our homes, for example, doing some of the jobs we'd like us to do, then they're going to take the form that is going to be most recognizable to us. And that's probably a marketing driven thing. It's the idea that human beings want digital innovation in their homes to look and sound like us. And without mentioning products deliberately, but the Amazon Alexa and the Google Assistant and the Hey Alexa, particularly, is as if this voice that responds is actually a real person, and that it's easier for us to engage and interface with technology if it's anthropomorphized, if it takes on a human form. What is interesting in terms of the world of AI and computer processing is modeling computer intelligence on the human brain might be a limiting factor. There's only so much we can remember. There's only so much that we can process. And actually, the computer world, particularly when you allow a computer script to have an inventive quality and to start to innovate itself and write new scripts, it doesn't always form itself into versions of the human being. So the computer world doesn't actually always anthropomorphize itself. It creates what you might call let's call it an alien being, a form that hasn't come into being. It can be brains that look very different. It can be thought processes, thinking processes in artificial intelligence that are actually very different from the human brain. So at one level, anthropomorphizing, you might say, is a design driven thing. It's an aesthetic thing. It's something more about human familiarity and comfort. But actually, when we go into the field of digital innovation to become really effective, it may not bear a resemblance to the human being at all. and that is unfamiliar, and that can be disturbing. And there are also science fiction books and science fiction films that will often present that version of digital innovation as something scary. Often they'll portray it as something going wrong, turning into horror, something that we have to wipe out with our limited human forms, often holding laser guns that kind of get rid of the enemy that's gone out of control. There's a lot of mixed metaphors, a lot of mixed views in the art world about what the future of digital innovation is going to look like. Certainly the android is anthropomorphized. The robot is often presented as a version, as in the movie I, Robot, as a version of a human being. And sometimes it's frightening because it looks rather like us, but it's essentially different. And we play around with that idea of being something that's unhinged from the human being. As you may hear, there's a dog in the background at the moment in my garden, and the human version of a robotic dog is often human. It doesn't tend to have 8 legs; it tends to have 4. And the first robotic guard dogs and the first robotics, security guards that are being piloted look like very grotesque versions of a dog. And we give them names and we anthropomorphize them. So some questions to think about is, where is digital innovation going? Is how long are we going to continue to anthropomorphize? Is it important to human well-being and actually the maintenance of peace in the world that our digital tools are familiar and comforting versions of the human being? Or are we going to get very used to the idea that the digital world is going to become alongside us very, very different entities of artificial intelligence that bear no physical resemblance to the human being? And the jury is out on it. There's certainly innovation happening in both directions, and you can go and have a look. As I sit here, and the sun is, well, really down now here in Brighton, and I can see the first stars out, I am developing into a world where I'm not sure. I'm certainly disturbed by anthropomorphized versions of human beings that are a kind of grotesque version of us. But equally, I don't feel at ease with computers that I don't understand and can't recognize, and are coming into being and having visual appearance that I'm not fully understanding as a consumer, as a user. I think my prediction is going to be that the anthropomorphized versions of digital innovation are going to prevail for a long time because they have strong mass marketing appeal. But certainly in the realms of medicine, of how we're understanding the scientific processes that underpin our reality, digital code, digital algorithms don't always bear much relationship to human thinking. And there's a danger that as they become more autonomous and grow beyond our familiarity, that is where we may be concerned that we lose control of them and they become unpredictable and dangerous. And that's right at the heart of digital innovation at the moment in the world. Plenty to reflect on there.